Yes, you are up.
Okay, I'm up. Well, good morning, good afternoon. I'm glad to be here. This is going to be exciting. Um, One of the things I want to mention before we really get rolling is that I was thinking about how to frame the presentation so that it would make more sense and be more actionable. And uh, I think part of what's going to happen today, I know part of what's going to happen today, is that we're going to switch into storytelling from time to time, and I'm going to try and give you some practical examples of how using this technology actually gives you a benefit in your work. Whether you're a commercial photographer or fine art photographer, it doesn't matter. But what I want to do is start off by putting us in the frame of day-to-day practical application, and then transition to how do you use the technology, and then come circle back to, and therefore the benefit in your work is ABC. So we're going to work through it that way and ride through the transitions with me. I think you'll find that they'll be useful. Okay, push the right button, David, and you'll get the next screen. There we go. So I want you to think beyond your desktop. A lot of people think about screen calibration. They think of their laptop or their desktop and working on images in the studio. And I really believe, based on, in particular, on some recent experiences that I've had, that this is a competitive and a quality issue, and really the wave of the future is color integrated work groups. And what that really means is that everybody's seeing the same color all the time. And if it's not exactly the same color, it's 98%. And then I'm including displays, I'm including printed materials, I'm including electronic signage even at some point in televisions, things like that. And you've got electronic sharing, you've got people who are involved in making multiple approvals. I just went through that, for example, about a magazine article. And it was a black and white image that apparently they're going to use on the cover. We went back and forth about the density and the shadows and the highlights and the highlight detail on that image. And I finally realized that one of the 4 people involved in this approval process needed to switch to a different computer or do something about their display, because they kept saying they couldn't see the highlight detail, and got them over to a different unit, and the problem was solved. So you have to be aware that what people are using, the equipment is different, but frequently you can't do anything about that, or you can ask them to switch. But what you can do is get them on a consistent standard of color management, and that's what this is all about. You can greatly improve your control and consistency, and that makes life easier. It saves money, time, and space. And based on what's been happening to me lately with nobody wanting to get together for meetings and do everything over the wire, it makes perfect sense to work with this technology. Now I'm going to just take a quick stop here and remind you that we have the drawing at the end for a free unit, and also we'll be giving you a discount code. I wanted to mention that again. So keep this scenario in mind, that what I'm talking about has practical application. It's not just something that's nice to do. It's something that's going to help you advance your art, advance your business, make you money, make your life easier. Now, one of the things that we would like to do, there's 2 poll questions. If you would just take 40 seconds or 35 seconds here and go to the poll panel and just tell us if you're an amateur, or you're an aspiring professional, or a full-time professional. Okie dokie. Well, that's an interesting result. Okay, push the right button. Now, this strange-looking, I showed this picture to David Tobie, and his first response was, "David, what is that?" And what it is, it's a tower with ultraviolet lamps mounted on it, and it's used in hospitals to disinfect rooms. It's a very difficult shot to make. The shot is usually made in 2 frames and combined using what I call sort of false HDR. I combine the 2 frames together because the lighting required to reveal all the details in the device is much brighter than the bulbs can produce. So I shoot the bulbs lit in a dark room, and then I shoot the device with strobes, and I combine the 2 shots. The problem comes in that the president of this company really insists that the bulbs, when illuminated, or sometimes they call them energized, being a bunch of engineers, have to be a specific blue color. And we go back and forth, again, over the phone over who's seeing the correct blue. And there'll be times when I say, Peter, whose office are you in? I'm in Richard's office. Well, Richard's office has a laptop PC that's never been calibrated. And I say, Peter, walk 2 doors down the hall to your Mac Pro, which I calibrated for you, and take a look there. And he goes, oh, it looks fine. So there's a great example of how you can shortcut a lot of the issues that go on with clients or just about anybody else that you're collaborating with, you're trying to show your images. It can be spot colors on packaging or lights on electronics, and you can eliminate a lot of significant issues with color control and consistency in post-production, or even just display for whatever purpose. And so if you've got calibrated and fine-tuned displays on site, whether it's a gallery owner or it's a colleague of yours that you work with or a customer, whoever it is, they'll thank you for it. And the company I'm talking about is going to purchase the Spyder 4, and the key product managers and the president and a couple of other VPs are going to be online because they're always passing images back and forth as well. Now, one thing about printing, we're going to come back to this later. I put this in here because it's a sort of a parallel but relevant, is that if you're printing through a print service provider, keep in mind that you want to know what kind of screen they're using and how they're profiling things. And we'll come back to that in a little while, but I want to plant that seed with you before I move on. Now, the Spyder 4 is a full spectrum color sensor. It covers the color spectrum better than a 3-channel RGB device, which is what the other devices have that are out there. And you really only need the one device. It works with wide gamut LED displays, other display technologies that are coming up. And one of the things that I like about it is that it's calibrated to see color the way the eye sees color. I have a wide gamut display. I'm sitting in front of it right now. And interestingly, I was pretty happy with the color I was seeing. And I got the Spyder 4 and one of the early versions, and I called David up and I said, there's something different about this, is that the transitions in highly saturated and high contrast areas are much smoother. The grays are more neutral. It's a noticeably better job. Is it night and day? No, but my screen to print match has improved. And certainly the amount of fatigue that I feel if I'm doing a long editing session has been reduced. And so it really does get the job done. They've added some software options, which we're going to talk about since this is supposed to be an advanced session. It has ambient light adaptation, which is a very, very nice thing to have. I work in a fairly dark office when I'm editing, and being able to match the screen settings to the lighting environment is a great thing. And the overall accuracy, I'm told, has increased 26%, and I think that's a pretty significant amount. So going to the next slide. Now there's 3 models of the Spyder 4. You have the Spyder 4 Elite, the Spyder 4 Pro, and the Express. And they all have different features, and in many cases if you buy one, you can upgrade to the next level. But just to go through some of the features here and give you an idea of what the differences are. The Spyder 4 Elite is obviously the most capable of the 3. It'll do multiple display calibrations. It can be upgraded to calibrate your television. It's actually the only one that I've ever used that does a decent job of a front projector calibration. It's actually easy to use and it works, which is just a godsend for my presentations. It does a good job with ambient light measurement. Expert Console is a very customizable software screen, which I'll show you shortly, which really puts you in the driver's seat. You can, as some people put it, you can put the thing on full automatic, or you can go back to a 5-speed stick shift and run through the gears as much as to your heart's content. You've got customized black and white luminance controls. We have features called Spyder Proof, which I'll show you in a moment is a way to compare the pre-calibrated and the calibrated states. Spyder Tune, which is a feature that lets you, I call it a micro adjustment, make small adjustments to what you're seeing on screen, and that's useful for a number of reasons. And there's this esoteric thing called iterative gray balance, and at the end of the day what that does is it adds a number of gray patches to the calibration cycle and significantly improves, in my view, the result, particularly if you're doing a lot of black and white imaging and black and white printing. I do that a lot. I also still shoot on black and white film. And so I use the iterative gray balance on every calibration. One of the differences, I'm not going to read this whole chart to you, of course, but the Spyder 4 Pro has quite a few options, for example, in adjusting gamma and white point, but it's a little bit more limited than the Spyder 4. It does have multi-display calibration TV. It doesn't do the front projector. If you don't own a front projector, maybe you don't need that. The ambient light measurement definitely is a plus. It does not have the Expert Console and some of the other things, but it does have Spyder Proof, which is very useful. So you can see that for these different products, you can tailor your purchase or acquisition to your needs as a photographer. Some people simply need to go with the standard Gamma 2.2 and 6500K white point and calibrate the display and get on with it. Other people want to have a more fully featured device, and you have those choices. Now, coming back to something here, remember the work group concept and collaboration and working over the wire. And here's a number of devices. We have a wide gamut display. We're showing a laptop, which, interestingly enough, is in the process of calibrating an iPad, which is a great feature of the Datacolor lineup. And then on the right we have an iPad, and inside that little green rectangle you'll notice that there's an iPhone. And I took this picture at a conference that we attended earlier this year, and you'll notice that the iPhone and the iPad color are very, very close. Even in, I mean, I have to admit, I took this picture with a small camera. Even under these circumstances, it's a remarkable performance by the Spyder in bringing those two tools together. So I have complete confidence that when I pull out my iPad or my iPhone and I'm working with a client or a potential customer or a print collector, that I can show them color that's going to make sense, and the next time I pull out perhaps a different device, they're going to see color that's right on, that's going to match. And that's a big advantage to me competitively. Okay, so let's talk about how you use your images. There's 4 choices here in this poll. Do you use them on the web and internet and email only? Are you using your images for commercial and stock and publication, or fine art, for example, an exhibition, or all? And I'm being reminded that I'm supposed to announce the results, which I will do this time. Okay, it looks like the poll is closed, and we have 13% are going web or internet only, 12% commercial or stock, 26% fine art, gallery, and exhibition, and 50% all of the above. Now, that makes the case for me. That makes the case for me because if you're going web, internet only, it simplifies your needs in some ways. But if you're doing the commercial stock publication or fine art and exhibition, you really do need to be in the driver's seat. You need to be really making things happen and locking down your color so that you can be as competitive as you need to be and make your work look as good as it can look and realize its potential. Put a lot of time and effort into it. And not having the color controls in place makes it harder to do that. Now let's talk a little bit about the software that comes with the Spyder 4. And I'm not going to drill down to an infinite level of detail here because it's not necessary. The software is very user-friendly, and that's a phrase that might be overused in some degree, but you can, out of the gate, go in two paths. You can go the customized user control path, or you can use what some people call next mode. My cursor is sort of circling that, and what I mean by next mode is it's wizard driven, and you simply tell it which display you're using, and then you click next when you're asked to. Excuse me, a sip of water, and things will just roll forward. But we're gonna look for the most part at the user controlled mode. Now, one of the first screens you're going to see are the calibration settings, and you can choose your calibration settings. Now, the first time you do this, clearly you're going to want to do a full calibration. But in subsequent episodes, you don't necessarily need to do that. Here's a scenario. You've made a print. You bring it back and put it in your light box, and you compare one to the other, and you go, that doesn't look right. Now, one of the things that you can do is do a quick check cal, which takes much less time to run and will validate whether or not your current calibration is working for you. And it does happen from time to time. A computer will crash and that calibration file will get corrupted. You don't want to be in that position. And a quick check cal will tell you, well, is the monitor working correctly or not? If it's working correctly, maybe you need to clean the print heads on your printer. And so it gives you a troubleshooting path that's short and effective. And of course, you can recalibrate your display if you want to. Now, in this particular screen, you can set the gamma and the white point and the brightness. And these are these are drop-down menus. And these are the settings that I recommend you use as a starting point. And there's a number of reasons why, but the most important thing, pardon me, that I can point out on here is that the gamma and the white point are accepted standards, but there's a lot of discussion amongst people. Every time I do one of these seminars or on the forums is that how bright should the monitor be? And the monitor brightness is in significant degree should be driven by the ambient light in your environment. Now, back up a little bit. What's going on with your room? Do you have a window that has bright light coming through it? Are you in an office where perhaps you're not in control of the overhead lighting? You might want to have brightness higher than 120. Keep in mind that when these things come out of the box, they can be set to 200 or 300 or even more, which is too high for photography. And in some lighting environments, 120 is too low. But there is a sweet spot in there that'll allow you to see effectively, you know, your work, edit the photograph, see the details, etc., etc. So keep that in mind. And there's a little bit more coming in terms of the ambient light measurement that's very helpful in terms of setting the brightness or the luminance of your screen. Now let's talk about the expert console, which is, it's kind of the master control panel in some ways. And I'm going to mention in passing here, where my cursor is right now over here where it says shortcuts, there's a drop-down menu. You can actually jump to the expert console panel anytime you want as you start this up. And it'll do two things for you. It will give you a snapshot, sort of like a dashboard, of all the things that you've set so far. Hold one second. I'm going to mute my mic and take a sip of water. Okay, I'm back. I apologize. Or you can use this to customize what you're doing. So for example, you can select the display. Let's say you have two panels connected to your computer. There are preset targets. For example, this one says 2.2, 6500, 120. There's a number of other preset targets. And you can also save a target. You can customize your white point and your gamma as you see fit. And if you switch from excuse me, visual to measured mode, you can set the white luminance to a particular value that you want. Obviously, you turn calibration on. I don't normally turn on Spyder certification, but I do normally have the ambient light compensation on, at least at the beginning. When I'm, let's say I'm with a customer and I am working with them in their office over the course of an afternoon, the light might be changing. It's useful to have it on. And number 7 here, gray balance calibration. That iterative gray balance calibration is very, very useful. It does lengthen the calibration cycle. You have to have a little bit of patience, but it does also give a better result in quite a number of ways, not just the grays, but in a lot of your other transitions and the details that you see on screen. Now, if you do go to ambient light analysis, there's an intermediate pop-up that I didn't show you here. It'll ask you which device you're using. And of course, you'll say Spyder 4. And then it will measure the room light and give you a recommendation for target settings. Now, since the office that I work in has relatively low light, the device recommended a pretty low setting. Most people couldn't work with this setting and be comfortable. The screen would look dark and kind of warm or yellowish. They'd be happier probably at 100 or 110 and somewhere between 5500 and 6500. But it depends on the time of day. It depends on how fatigued you are. It depends on the light in the room. There's a number of variables. And what that leads me to is to remind you that you can make more than one profile. You can make a profile for the morning, and you can make a profile for the evening. You can do any number of things. And of course, once you've made this measurement, you can keep the current settings, which will be incorporated into your calibration. Or you can accept the suggested settings, and they will replace the current settings. Now, once the calibration cycle is completed, and I haven't put the screen up for that because I think everybody's seen how you put the calibration device on the screen and the patches are displayed and the software in the device measure the values in each patch. But I think what's more interesting is that we have a color map here which represents the scope of human vision. And then we actually have two profiles here. You can do two profiles, two monitors, however you like it, and compare them. And so purple line represents Adobe 98 RGB, which is a robust color space, much better than sRGB in my opinion. And then we have these two profiles that I did on different dates, one back in December and one yesterday. And you can see right here, there's a red dot and a blue dot and the green dot. The two profiles coincide perfectly. What this is telling me, first of all, is that the monitor is quite stable, that it's not shifting, that there is no discernible difference in terms of the calibrations on the two different dates several months apart. But it's also showing me that the gamut, or the number of crayons in the box, is significantly better than Adobe 98. So this will tell you how you stack up, and it's an important thing to know. A lot of printers, the multi-ink printers that we have now, the ones that have been sold, say, in the last 2 or 3 years that have 10 or 11 or 12 inks, even some of the 8-ink printers, will meet or exceed Adobe 98. And so just having a comparison between the target color gamut and what your display is giving you can be very, very helpful. And then let's circle back to the practical world. You've got a customer or a client or a colleague who has a display in another place, and they have an older or less capable display, and they're working in sRGB. It's important to know that they're working on a display and looking at images that you're sending them, and vice versa, that are being shown in a slightly different way. And that information can help you move your work forward in a constructive fashion. Now, this morning, my colleague, David Tobie, did a brief test and calibrated an Apple Cinema display, and that is the chart that you see on the upper left. And he measured the display in an uncalibrated state first. And this is an eye test, I admit it, but I think I can make it quite a bit clearer. The important bits of information live in this column where it says delta E, and the delta E simply shows you the difference between what the monitor gave you and what it should have given you. And what the numbers mean, simply put, you want to see a delta E that's 3 or less. The human eye can discern just barely a delta E of 1, but you want to see a delta E that's 3 or less. And the average here, the most important number on this chart, 2.54, is making it in under the wire. Now, interestingly, the second chart shows you a calibrated state, and that calibrated state yielded a delta E of 1.14. Now, since that's a change greater than 1, that's a significant difference. It's going to be noticeable to the eye. And in the primary colors, you can see that there are big, big differences between this set and the uncalibrated set. Now, the cyan bar, that particular color happens to be outside the gamut of sRGB, so it's not going to get treated very well in an analysis of this type. Also, you're going to notice that although there's improvements in the gray scale bars, the improvements are not as dramatic, and the simple answer to that is that the test for gray is more demanding than it is for the primary colors, and the reason is that the human eye, how do I put this? The human eye can discern more finer gradations in grayscale than it can in highly saturated colors. So the test is more demanding. It's built into the system. And so you're going to see somewhat less of a benefit in the testing. However, I'm here to tell you that on the screen, it's definitely noticeable. As I said before, I do a lot of black and white work, and it really works for me. I do the iterative gray balance, and I'm in heaven. I can really see what I'm going to get when I make the print. Now there's another tool that's provided called Spyder-Proof, and Spyder-Proof has a set of images that you can use to compare your uncalibrated state to your calibrated state. So on the upper left we have the calibrated view, and on the lower right the uncalibrated view. And just take a look, for example, at this little garden shot that I'm pointing to, and look at the greens and the saturation there, and then come back up to the calibrated state and look at the difference. Same thing for the church. Now in this particular feature, the images are divided into four, they're divided into quadrants. You have people shots in color, you have black and white shots in a quadrant, etc., etc. If you double click in the middle of one of these, it will enlarge and show you those four images, and you can compare them calibrated to uncalibrated. So if you have a certain type of or category of image that you're working with, you can pick one of these quadrants. You can also double click again on a single image and compare that image in a calibrated versus an uncalibrated state. So it's a very well thought out tool that covers the territory. I think that most photographers will find that it gets them, again, into the neighborhood of the work that they're doing and gives them a sense that what they just did is going to be effective for their work requirements. Another feature, Spyder Tune. This is one of the really interesting innovations that's been put into the software. And fundamentally, it allows you to customize the profile that you're creating for your display. And you can customize it on any of these important levels. The white point, and you have blue and red, purple and green. And those of us who are familiar with the color wheel, that'll ring a bell right away. And you can adjust the gamma and the brightness. And of course you can switch back and forth from before and after. Now this is a pretty useful tool. You can do side-by-side matching with a laptop. Let's say you have a laptop and you're going to be going out to see clients, or you're going to be going out shooting, or whatever you're going to be using it for. And you really want to have some level of confidence that it's going to let you come back to your desktop without having to make major changes or adjustments in the way you're thinking about your photos or how you've adjusted them and things like that. And so this is a particularly useful tool. Just think about it. In one respect, most laptops are sRGB, so they have a fairly constrained color gamut, whereas most recently made desktop monitors have gone beyond sRGB. And so you may find yourself wanting to give it a little tweak so that it's just a little bit closer and makes your life a little bit easier. And there's another thing I should mention. No two people have identical color vision. There are going to be cases where, not that somebody is colorblind, of course, and they're trying to deal with this. That's not what it's for. But it can be a useful tool if you like to see things a little bit warmer, or you like to see a slightly different gamma, or you want to move the brightness up a little bit beyond what you originally thought you wanted. All of those things are available, and you can come back to this screen and do it again later. So it's a very flexible and useful tool, and I use it. I do use it. Now, we're going to talk very briefly about this. There's another feature in here called StudioMatch. One of the big things that happens when I get questions, particularly as a consultant, someone calls me up and says, gee whiz, I went over to so-and-so's place and we made a print, and then I brought it back to my studio and I fired up my computer and it doesn't match my screen. Or they've just made a print and they say it doesn't match my screen. And I say, well, what do you mean exactly it doesn't match your screen? Is it the color? Is it the greens? Is it the blues? and they inevitably say it's too dark, which means the screen is too bright. And the big challenge in a work environment is that the brightness control is the easiest thing for someone to fiddle around with and mess with and change. And of course, it's delivered in the box. It's too bright. And so one of the big challenges in a work group or collaborative effort is just to get all of the screens to the same level of brightness. And that's what this tool will do for you. It will help you get the monitors again in the neighborhood so that your workflow and your collaboration is that much easier. Now let's circle back once again to the world of practicality. And before I go through this list of additional issues, I want to talk a little bit about the two charts that you see at the bottom. The one on the left is the Spyder checker. I highly recommend it. I use this for a couple of reasons. It can be used to calibrate your camera. It can be used to check certain spot colors. You can use it to gray balance. But the thing that I find I use it for the most is if I'm working with a client or I'm just doing my own work. Frequently, nowadays, I shoot with the camera tethered to a computer. So the computer's calibrated. In theory, the color on the computer is accurate. So I put the Spyder checker in the shot. I light it the way I'm going to be shooting. I put that same lighting setup together, and I take a shot, frequently with the product or person in it, and the chart. And then I look at the computer screen with the chart on it, and then I look over at the chart on the set, and you can see right away whether or not things are working out. And the first place that I look is on the gray panels, because I don't want to see any discernible color in these gray panels. These should be gray. Frequently they turn out to be a little bit yellow or a little bit magenta or a little bit pink. And if you're seeing that on your screen, then you probably have an issue with the settings on your display that you could take advantage of that and improve things. But you can also look, particularly at these nice soft colors over here. It's pretty easy to see whether or not you're on or off in terms of the color rendering that you're getting when you're shooting. And why do this up front? The first thing is it gives the client who's standing next to me some reassurance that the color is going to be all right. The other thing that it does, aside from any benefits for calibration or other issues, is it gives me some confidence that I'm not going to get to the end of this photo shoot and have 200 images that I'm going to have to wrestle with to get them into shape. That I can see right away that I've got a problem somewhere. And you know, that does happen. I'll give you, just as an example, strobes age, and as they're used, the number of times they get fired is a big issue. As they age, they frequently change in color temperature. Now, you can't see that when you open the case and you take the strobe out and you start working with it. But if you have one of these devices in the frame, you're going to be better able to adapt to that in a number of ways that we've already discussed. Another really useful tool is this grayscale wedge. You can make one of these in Photoshop. They're all over the web. People provide them for free in all kinds of places. And although it's a limited tool, it does do two things for you. You should be able to see the difference between each one of these steps. Okay, and if, for example, the bottom 2 steps or the bottom 3 steps all merge into one, or the top 3 steps all merge into one, then you've probably got an issue with the luminance of your screen or the dynamic range of your screen. And then, of course, many times if there are color issues, you'll start to see one or more wedges, frequently they're in the middle or towards the bright end of the scale, are going to show some color artifacts. And those are a tip-off that you've got something you need to deal with. So going back to the list, display devices do vary in build quality. It's sad but true that laptops from a manufacturer can have the same name and the same model on them, and the manufacturer put different displays in them because that was the shipment they got week 1 versus week 6. It's a fact. The panels change with age, although things have gotten much better as the panels age, the backlight ages in particular. The display characteristics are affected. There are different types of displays without getting into a sea of acronyms. Some of them have what I call a better viewing angle than others. In other words, some of them require you to have your eye, the axis of your vision, dead center. And if you move your head around, this is true for laptops in particular, if you move your head around, one or more attributes of the display can and will change. Color can change, contrast, density, all of that. And I'm sure we've all experienced that. I would recommend, if you don't have it yet, that down the road you consider getting a wide gamut display that gives you at least Adobe 98. The printing devices are heading that way, and it does make things easier for you as other people move into that space. It makes it easier for you to work. Consider using a color target like the Spyder checker. Try to persuade your customers and your colleagues. This is a best practices issue. It's something that will resonate with them. It's intended to save money, time, and space, and some aggravation. Master the technical details. Eventually you're going to run into situations where the video card is a problem. I had a laptop with that problem about a year ago. Are the connectors working properly, and are you using the right connectors on a particular video card? The camera technology and what's the camera rendering, you're shooting in RAW, what's your output color space when you process your images. All of those are important things to deal with. Now, it might look like a bit of a digression, but given the importance of the iPad to so many of us, Datacolor went ahead and developed a tool that allows us to calibrate the iPad. And this is one of the ending screens called Spyder Proof, which shows you the difference between the uncalibrated and calibrated state. Now, this is obviously composited. This is not what you would see on the iPad screen, but it gets the point across that there is a significant difference in an uncontrolled iPad rendering versus a calibrated iPad rendering. And you definitely can get your iPad and your iPhone into the same neighborhood, and the image quality, the perceived image quality, is significantly improved. And I'm saying this as a person who uses their iPad to show customers and potential customers images every day, every other day, and I need to be confident when I open that case up and turn it on and start showing them images that it's really presenting my work in the best possible way. And if you look at some of the flowers and the detail in the model's eyes, you can really see the difference here. It's not made up, and it really does work. And this is just part of the integration that I've been harping about for the last 45 minutes. Now, very, very briefly, I want to point something out to you that if you haven't really dealt with this or you don't use it, you should take a really hard look at it. In Photoshop, this is also now in Lightroom 4, but I'm not going to spend time on that right now. You can create what's called a proof setup. And this is something of an archaic term from the magazine printing industry. But what it does is it lets you create a preview on screen that simulates what your print is going to look like when it's finished. And what it does is it uses First of all, you have to calibrate your display, but it's going to use the paper profile that was provided with the paper or the printer to govern the way the color looks on your screen. And what that does for you is really two things. The color on your screen is going to simulate the color on your final print. That means while you're editing, you're going to see what the end result is going to be en route. Now, I'm sort of repeating myself there, but the idea is that you don't get to the end of an editing cycle that's 2 hours long and realize you don't have what you need. So if you turn soft proofing on at the beginning, there's a huge benefit to you in terms of productivity. Okay, and it really helps you drive towards a particular look on a particular paper. It's a predictor of what your screen to print match is going to be when you walk up with that final print. So I highly recommend that you use this. Under the help screen in Photoshop, there's a complete tutorial on how to do this if you have any issues with it, but it's really quite easy. And there's just one little warning, which is that when you close an image and open a new one, it doesn't turn the soft proofing back on. You have to turn it on for each image, which is unfortunate but true. It's just something to keep in mind. So soft proofing is your friend. Again, it saves money, time, and space. Now there's some advanced tools. I'm going to talk about these briefly because we're getting close to the end of our hour. But these tools are really, really useful for intermediate and advanced users, and they tell you a lot about the performance of your display that you can't get any other way. So to show you one example, this is the color uniformity for brightness, and every screen has a sweet spot, usually right in the center. And you can see on this test screen that the corners are pretty decent. Okay, you've got outliers in the two upper corners. 2.6, not so bad. It's under 3. But this upper left-hand corner at 4.3, not the greatest result. That display has got a bit of an issue there. So this can tell you, if nothing else, if you're going to keep using that display, that sweet spot in the center is your friend, and editing based on what's up in that left-hand corner might not be the best way to go. But in any event, this map is kind of like a heat map in a way. Can give you some really good information about how uniform your display is. Now, what happens over time is that you may see this change, and if you test this regularly over a period of years, of course, eventually they're going to be out of limits, and then you're going to know that it's time to consider a new device. This is the 48 patch version of the color test that I showed you before, and it's not as helpful to me to pay attention to all these individual colors as much as it's important to me to pay attention to this average delta E number. Now at 1.8, okay, that's okay. The max is at 3.27, which is a little bit close to the edge. This is on a cinema display. I, on my desk, have an HP Dreamcolor display, and it's like a lot of wide gamut displays will deliver a delta E of about half this amount. So it will be somewhere in the 0.7 to 0.8 range, which means the color is extremely accurate and the screen to print match is fabulous. But this test can really be useful to you, particularly if you're, again, if you're working with spot colors, standardized color for manufacturing and things like that. Running this test after you've done your calibration can be very useful. Now, of course, you can run all these tests and then you can get a summary. Pardon me. Now, why is this useful? Well, of course, it gives you an aggregation of the results of all the different tests, and other than the luminance uniformity, this is a pretty good result. You can also use this to compare the results from different displays in a workplace. You may find there's a display that needs to be weeded out. You may find that there's one that needs to be adjusted. This can key you into some of those issues in a very easy and straightforward manner. Now, let's back up a little bit. I'm going to go all the way back to the top real quick. And I want to remind you that it's not just about calibrating your desktop for the sake of convenience and perhaps seeing more accurate color, but that there's a trend now in the industry for people to work over the wire, to send images via the web or via a service like YouSendIt, and you really want to know that they're seeing what you're seeing. You're doing electronic sharing. Multiple people have to be involved in an approval for a project, or you want to send something to a gallery owner or art director and get them to buy your image and show it in an exhibition. You'd really like the color on both ends to be working. And so you can greatly improve control and consistency with a very, very modest investment in time and money. And it's just one of those things that I see coming now in my own work. I see it coming from my own customers. It's not something I'm making up. It's coming from the people, and particularly on the commercial side, but it's also starting to come up. I'm helping a friend with an exhibition of black and white images, and getting really neutral black and whites has been bugging him because he hasn't been calibrating his display. And now that we've done that, his pre-exhibition printing cycle is finally smoothed out. His aggravation level has gone down dramatically. So there's a number of really good reasons to be working this way nowadays. So I think we're about ready. We got about 4 minutes to go. It's time for the drawing. And while Kim is coming up, or David is coming up with the person who has won the Spyder 4, I wanted to let you all know that there is a 20% off discount for all Spyder products on the website and free shipping. The promo code is W as in William, E as in Edward, B as in boy, 18, T as in Tom, Y as in yellow. And the drawing results. Kim is telling me to hold, please. So I am. The suspense is killing me.
Should we give you a drum roll, Dave, while you're waiting?
Oh, sure.
So I enjoyed your lecture today, David. I just wish I'd had more time to listen to it. I've been typing madly and will continue to for some time further here, attempting to get through the most pertinent of the questions. The biggest question that everybody is asking is there a Spyder 3 to Spyder 4 upgrade? And the answer is this is hardware, guys. There's no such thing. But oftentimes what Datacolor does once the the initial rush, and we're still trying to keep up with orders, is over, is in America the way these things work is they offer a user loyalty discount. However, the 20% off they're offering today is probably pretty similar to the user loyalty discount. So there's no real advantage to waiting and hoping you can do an upgrade, because I think the upgrade is about what you're already being offered today. So I'm going to sign off here and let Kim do the drawing.
Don't go too far. I've got the drawing results, and stay on the line, David.
All right.
The winner is Jack Marsher. So congratulations, Jack Marsher. And Kimberly will be in touch with you about getting you your new unit. Now, David, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the, say the top 2 or 3, the most important questions that you dealt with?
Well, I'm not sure. I haven't even looked down through the list to see how many questions I didn't answer, and the answer
Oh
is
my God.
lots. I got somewhat better than half of them maybe. But the number one question was Spyder 3 to Spyder 4 upgrades. There were also a number of people who were asking about just things that we're not covering because this isn't kind of the basic seminar or webinar. So people were asking about you know, the differences between the models and things like that. So and mostly it's not just the simple question, it's the complex question. Another big one, and this one also isn't simple, is I have an iMac. Is that good enough? Can I calibrate it? And the answer is, well, yes and no and sort of, and if it's the latest model, it's got enough dimming on the dimming switch. If it doesn't, we're going to have to cut levels in your video card, and that affects the quality of your display. And none of them are great displays. I mean, really, ideally, as gorgeous as an iMac is, it's really not an image editing machine. Many people put it to that use. It's pretty much at the edge of the range that you'd consider for that. So, you know, a second monitor is a great thing to consider getting if you have an iMac. But I'm guessing that Apple is going to upgrade the quality of the panels in their iMacs and their MacBook Pros because they've set a new standard with the iPad. It's in-plane switching, IPS, which means it's great viewing from any angle, and it's high resolution, and of course that's going to drive demand that their laptops and their iMacs start offering that same quality. So hold off if you're considering buying an iMac because there's some hope that in the next year there'll be new devices that come out. I suspect they might come out in the laptops first because the screens are smaller, but you know there's hope perhaps that a better screen may be coming out. But it's, you know, a very affordable thing to add a second display to an iMac, and that's really the best way to get a good editing screen on your system.
How about one more important question?
Well, let me think back. What else did people ask? There's a lot of people asking about specific issues that are, you know, I didn't get any actual support ticket items today. I always tell people you got to go to Datacolor for support for, you know, highly specific cases. But none of them were what I would call studio questions. They all really are just plain monitor calibration issues, and so it just shows that we need to do just plain monitor calibration webinars fairly frequently.
Okay.
So,
well, I want to wrap up. I want to thank Datacolor for sponsoring the session.
Datacolor wants to thank you as well, David.
And Mr. Tobie, you've been fabulous in programming me for success and doing this series. I really appreciate that, and I really feel like we're doing a better and better job of helping people understand the issues that can help them.
Well, I hope that everybody who's listening in will look at the webinar series and see which of the upcoming webinars are of interest to them, and let us know what topics you are interested in so that we can try to target these to your needs.
Yeah, don't be shy. Just write an email, and in fact, you'll see right here my email is dsaffir@mac.com. I do answer questions for my students. If I don't answer you in 24 hours, it means I missed it. So send it again. Please be patient. I get a lot of emails, but I will do my darndest as long as I'm in town to answer you the same day. My blog site has a lot of articles, including screen-to-print match and display calibration on them, and I urge you to go and look. There's close to 300 articles on there now. Probably half of them are just hands-on practical stuff about photography and color management. My website's pretty much just a portfolio site, but both web addresses are on here. And then, of course, David Tobie has a blog that's not brand new, but recently started, and he's got some fabulous articles on there. For example, about the new, is it the 5D Mark III? Is that what they call it?
That's the new camera. Some of my articles are Datacolor related or color management related. Others are photography related. I've spent a lot of time in the bowels of Lightroom 4 and Photoshop PS6 or CS6 beta lately. Feel as though I don't get out to see the light of day much, but so if those are areas that interest you, take a look at my blog. If those sound scary, then well, just go to my website and look at the pictures, because I am a photographer too. I'm not just a geek. Oh, and one last issue that did come up frequently that I didn't think of before, Rec 709. If this number means nothing to you, you can stop listening now. For those who are interested in monitor calibration for video, the answer is yes, it works two ways. And I typed this at least twice, but I'll say it since it was such a common question. If you want to calibrate for video, there's two things you're doing. One is you're calibrating a computer monitor to a standard for video. That you do with Spyder 4 Elite. It's the only application of ours, of our current line that offers Rec 709 and other video calibrations, PAL, CCAM, whatever. Now, if you're calibrating a video reference display, think about this. There's no computer connected. There's no place to put a profile or a calibration table. So what you do then is you use Spyder 4 TV HD, which is a TV calibration tool. It lets you adjust the brightness, contrast, color, tint, and white point of a TV or a TV reference monitor. Now, we're not buying $60,000 video reference monitors to put in our still photography studios, but we are doing video. So the way we do that is to buy a decent monitor dedicated as a video reference monitor for checking your final work on, and calibrate it with Spyder 4 TV HD. And you can get a cross grade from Spyder 4 Elite to Spyder 4 HD TV for, the price isn't out on that yet, it's brand new, but the whole product, Spyder 4 TV, is just over $100, so it'll certainly be well under $100. You cross-grade and get the software and the Spyder web for putting it on big screens and all that, and you can do your home theater with it if you have one, as well as being able to do your video monitors.
Now, I see a question here that may have been answered, but I think this is an important one. I kind of raised this issue myself. It says, why is it that when I send my photos to a photo service for prints, the photo comes back darker than I see on my calibrated screen? The short answer is your screen is bright. Brighter is too bright. So what you want to do, first of all, is ask them for an ICC profile for their output device. Okay, let's just say it's a Noritsu machine printer. Okay, and they should be able to send you one, and in Photoshop, if you go to the help screen, you can find directions on installing it. It's very easy to do. And then you can soft proof as long as your screen brightness is under control. If you've got your screen brightness cranked up, you're going to produce images that when you send them to the lab, they're going to come back and be too dark. And that I get this question 10 times a week. Everybody falls into this trap because the labs don't tell them what the problem is. So there's the answer. If your print's too dark, your screen's too bright. And then, of course, get yourself a profile so that you can get the color to, do what you want it to do.
One other very common question or comment was PSP. Someone said to me, what is PSP? And out of context, I said maybe it means Photoshop, but of course it was service provider.
Service provider.
Yeah, I was not in context for the question. Therefore, I gave the wrong answer, and 87 people corrected me. So thank you all.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well,
I think that's it for today. So I will.
Thank you, everybody.
I will sign off now, and appreciate
enjoy the rest of your week, and thank you, David, and enjoy the rest of your week, and do please come back to the next one, the next webinar. Bye, everybody.